Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April the 8th, and I hope that you are all bearing up well under these strange circumstances under which we are now living. In uncertain times, as we are living, in uncertain times, we like something reliable to hold on to. Some people don't like to go out on a ship. I know some of you like to go on a cruise, things like that. Some are just scared to death of that because they feel the movement of the ship beneath them. When the waves rock the ship, all that you have to hold on to is also rocking. You can hold on to the rail, you can hold on to something solid, but if the ship goes down, so does that rail, so does that solid thing. And so people are sometimes afraid of being out on a ship like that. One of the expressed fears that comes about when people experience an earthquake is that they are troubled that the earth itself was moving, because they're used to having that as something they can rely on. But when the earth moves, what's left? Well, the truth is we're all in some kind of a storm right now. I'm reminded of the book of Ezekiel. I've been doing some personal reading in Ezekiel, and I'm fascinated by the story. He lived in a time that was at least uncertain. Israel had already been destroyed. Judah was about to be carried into captivity. And all the things that the people were used to holding on to were gone. The city of Jerusalem was destroyed. The temple was destroyed. The wall around the city was broken down. All that had made them feel secure was gone. There was nothing to hold on to. Even sometimes families were separated. Nothing was left except the presence of God. In the very last part of the book of Ezekiel, there is a description there about a city. And in being quite honest, it's a mysterious kind of description. There's some hard things to understand about it. It sounds a lot like a city that is described in the book of Revelation, but it's obviously not the same city. But there is this city being described. And it was supposed to be a description that would give the people hope. Because in spite of all the chaos that they were experiencing, that city was named Yahweh Shammah. The Lord is there. That was the whole message of the book of Ezekiel. In spite of the tumultuous times in which they lived, God was present. Actually, all through Scripture, there have been times of uncertainty. From Noah's task of building a boat, evidently even before there had been any rain, to the confusion that was at Babel, to the uncertain destination to which Abraham was sent. There was Joseph suffering innocently in that Egyptian jail. There was the wandering in the wilderness as the people were on their way to the promised land. In each of those cases, there was an uncertainty and a fear. But all that remained constant at all time was God. He promised His presence, and He never failed on that promise. That hasn't changed. God is still our constant. He is there when nothing else is reliable. He is there in our darkness. He is there in our fear. He is present when friends and family are not. He is there when the enemy is pounding at the door, and He is there when disease surrounds us. God is present in times of trouble and in times of peace. He is there when I need Him in the middle of the night, and He is there to lift me up in the morning. I want to read to you the first 12 verses from Psalm 139. It is a psalm of David, and he is expressing this very thought. And I hope that today you'll take comfort in this psalm. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all. You have enclosed me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is too high. I cannot attain to it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, and if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness will overwhelm me, and the light around me will be night, even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light are alike to you. In reading some specific parts of that psalm, I'm reminded of people taking with them the presence of God in perhaps some unusual circumstances. On Christmas Eve, 1968, we had astronauts orbiting the moon. These astronauts would not land on the moon, but it was a mission to go up and actually orbit the moon and then come back home. And on that Christmas Eve, they had the opportunity to speak to the entire world. And their choice of message that night was to read to all the people of the earth Genesis 1. From that spacecraft 240,000 miles away, a message that all the earth would listen to, those astronauts read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." They read that whole first chapter of Genesis, and it was indeed an inspiring thing. It is a little disappointing to know that that could never happen today, but it did then, because those astronauts took with them the knowledge of the presence of God. A few months later, in July of 1969, when our first astronauts actually landed on the moon, did you know one of the first things that they did was to take the Lord's Supper? They too took with them the presence of God. It is reassuring always in our uncertainty to have the presence of God surrounding us. And we are indeed living in uncertain times. I would encourage everyone to just kind of absorb what is going on around us, because these things we're going to talk about for years to come. We're going to talk about, do you remember when the schools were all closed from spring break on? Do you remember when all sporting events were canceled or postponed? Do you remember when so many businesses were either closed or having to do business in a different way to enforce social separation from one another? We're going to look back on this, and we're going to remember that these times were times that even families were separated from one another. Gatherings of any kind are discouraged. And of course, for us, one of our main memories is going to be, do you remember when worship services were canceled for 2 months or perhaps more? These are certainly uncertain times. The things that we experience right now, none of us have ever experienced before. And so there is in the mind of some a fear whenever we don't know exactly what's going to happen next. It brings about fear. But we don't have to be afraid, because all of those promises that God made in the past about his presence, that never has changed. God is still with us today. Let us look back at this one great truth. God is with us. God is there. I hope that today you will enjoy your walk in the presence of God, and let this be a day not of uncertainty, but of your strong walk with the certainty of the presence of the one who loves us all. Go and have a great day. Bye.